All right, we'll call to order the City Council regular meeting agenda for Monday, January the 27th at 2025 at 6:30 p.m. As we start to gather for our invocation and our pledges to both of our flags, I'm going to ask everybody to stand here for just a second in just a minute. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Deputy Vargas and his family, Brazoria County Deputy was killed in the line of duty just shortly after our meeting 2 weeks ago. And so we haven't had an opportunity to recognize him and honor him in the middle of our council meeting. So if you would rise, and after the silence, we'll be joined by an invocation by Councilmember Byram, followed by our pledges by Councilmember Chavarria. Thank you for that. And just by way of an announcement, we do have a fundraiser for the Vargas family this weekend on Saturday at Grazia from starts at about 8 in the morning till 1ish, I think. Uh, so come on out and support that family. Let's show that family what Brazoria County is really all about, that we're going to take care of our own and watch out for his loved ones who are still here, certainly in mourning. So thank you for each one of that. As we move forward in our agenda, roll call and certification of quorum. Madam Secretary, I will certify that we have a quorum present as all members of the council are present and accounted for. With that, if I could have our fire chief, and with us, just by way of an announcement, we are going to recognize our fire department and the award that they have received, but we have with us Chief Dale Skinner from Seguin. We've got Chief Dave Parker from Aldine, Chief Amy, is that Ramon? From Cy-Fair, and retired Chief Jennifer Maxwell with West University. So if you guys will join me down here. All right. Is this on? There we go. Chief, I'm going to hand you the mic.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Dale Skinner. I serve as the co-chair of the Best Practices Committee with the Texas Fire Chiefs Association. and it's my pleasure to be here to present this award to Chief Taylor and the Pearland Fire Department. The Texas Fire Chiefs Association developed a best practices program to encourage fire departments in Texas to seek continual improvement in their service delivery to their community. There are 12 chapters that include 113 standards which define best practices and the typical service areas provided by a fire department. This program is applicable to both paid, combination, and volunteer organizations, and most recently, our ESDs. The TFCA Best Practices Program requires departments to allow a third party to review their department's policies, practices, and procedures compared to the performance requirements outlined in this program. It's kind of like letting a stranger come and look through your underwear drawer. The Best Practices Program defines a pathway to organizational excellence, which ultimately enhances firefighter safety, long-term planning, standard operating guidelines, deployment analysis, risk management, and other administrative functions. While most communities believe that their fire departments is excellent, elected officials, city managers, fire chiefs, and citizens alike can verify this belief that their fire department attained the best practices designation. As mentioned earlier, this is accomplished through an independent third-party review to determine if an organization functions as at a defined level of excellence. The TCFA Best Practices Program provided the Pearland Fire Department a pathway to push its level of service to a status of excellence that is validated by independent experts. This designation demonstrates to the citizens of Pearland that your fire department is among the very best in the state of Texas. Pearland Fire Department joins only 33 other fire departments across the state of Texas that have received this prestigious recognition. So therefore, on behalf of the Texas Fire Chiefs Association, it is my pleasure to present Chief Taylor and the Pearland Fire Department with this plaque signifying their best practices recognition.
Yeah, thank you. Take it, Mike. Chief Skinner, I appreciate that on behalf of the Texas Fire Chiefs Association. We're very honored to receive this, but it was not me alone. Matter of fact, it took a huge team to get this designation. So we have a policy committee. Chief Johnson, Jacob Johnson, was our point person on this, along with Lieutenant Chavala, who stands to my right over here. We had our policy committee that a lot of our personnel that took part in that, with Lisette, executive assistant, and Lester Blow, our quartermaster. It took a lot of people to go through this process. It's a 360-degree evaluation of your entire organization, where you define your weak spots and you address those weak spots. And it is, when they come on site, they literally look at all our policies, procedures, operating procedures. They randomly select people throughout our organization and pull them aside and interview them to see if what they saw in policy is actually in fruition, so that you can't hide those marks. I'd like to also say that out of the 33 that Chief just mentioned, in the state of Texas, there are only 16 cities. Out of the 1,225 municipalities in Texas, there are only 16 that both the police and fire departments have earned their respective best practices designations, along with the ISO 1 designation. So with that, we're very proud of that, and that just shows that the policing in this city, as well as the fire service and the all hazards response that we provide to the citizens of Pearland, is second to none. Chief Spires, I know he stands shoulder to shoulder with me, but we tell everyone in the state that we're as good as it gets, and if people want to be as good as Pearland, we'll be happy to help them get there. But we try to set the bar, especially in this part of Texas. We take pride in what we do. Our personnel take pride in what they do. It's reflective in our training, but it's also reflective in our performance and our desire to serve our citizens and our community in the way we do. So thank you to our council, elected officials, Mayor Cole, our city manager's office, all of our city staff, because it takes all of us, every part of what we do as a fire department, is reflective in some part of every other department in this city. So it takes a team to do that. And want to say thank you to everybody. This is a team award. Appreciate it.
So what this just confirmed is I haven't been lying the last 4 years. I tell people all the time that we have the best police and the best fire department in the state, and now we have the hardware to actually prove it. And so it's a pleasure and an honor to to serve alongside these men and women. I know each council member is proud to have these types of individuals working here, serving here, saving lives here, and keeping our folks safe. But it's the dedication that we see each and every day. So it's real easy to go out and be a cheerleader for an organization such as Pearland Fire Department that did this. We got this award about 18 months ago to a year, somewhere in that ballpark, on the police side. And it was actually at that meeting I told the chief we really need to do this in the middle of a council meeting. And so a little bit of a seed change that you're going to see is not all of our proclamations or all of our awards going in the middle of a council meeting. We'll still do most of them before, but there's a handful like this, and we have one more coming up that need to be in the middle of a council meeting. We need to celebrate it a little bit more. Anytime you get honored as the best or one of the best and those types of awards, we need to celebrate it a little bit. With that, Victor, and who all's coming up? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, she declined. I think it's just you and me, Ron. Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm delighted to present an award from the Texas State Controller. It is the Open Government and Compliance Star. It recognizes the city as being excellent in the provision of public information and holding itself to account to the public. It's a testament to your commitment to being a trusted government, and we are one of only 13 in the state, 13 cities in the whole state of Texas who have been awarded this star. It's yours, Mr. Mayor.
And this just goes, we've got a city secretary's office and everything that they do that is excellent in how they respond to the public and the transparency that goes into it. And I'll say this, we're not perfect, but we strive to be every day. We strive to be the best. Means we're going to have some issues along the way, but we stop, we fix them, and we move on. And this is a dedication. It's something that each one of these members have when they're running. When you're running for an election, one thing that you always want to be and do is to be transparent, is to be out there to show people and do things the right way. That's what that Excellence Award is. And having only one of 13 in the state is tremendous. And so kudos to our staff for all that you do there. So council, thank you for indulging a little bit on that. Like I said, this won't be an every meeting occasion, but certain awards are just worthy to take a few minutes. So with that, we'll move forward in our agenda to citizens' comments. I notice we have one that's general by nature. All right, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bill Baldy,
Yep. That's all, Bill.
if you would make your way to the podium, give us your name and address for the purpose of the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I couldn't help but notice your last name with all the fire chiefs up here. The glare off their head was pretty tough. So.
Well, hey, I'm sorry. I've got hair. No offense to you guys, but that is my last name. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for hearing me, and congratulations to the Pearland Fire Department. Man, it's a tough job. I did it for 33 years, and I'm gonna tell you what, I've paid for it too. My body hardly moves anymore. What I'm here about is I'm a Civic Club president of Wesley Civic Club, and about 2 years ago, y'all came out and dug our ditches out, tore our streets up pretty good. And from what I understand, we're supposed to have our streets reworked. But in the meantime, we've got some pretty big potholes out there, and we'd like to see if we can get them filled up, if possible, with just temporary patch. Heron and meadow and mockingbird are the worst ones. Heron is the worst, but that's what we'd like to see if we can get done. And I don't know if the city has a truck that can come out and do it. They came out and fixed a couple in the front on Heron, but since then they've opened up again. But we've got all the way down Heron, we've got some big potholes, and our streets are just barely enough to get 2 cars through as it is. So just wondering, everybody comes to Civic Club wants to know what the situation is going to be on that. Do we have any updates on that?
Well, I see Lorenzo and I see Eric both here. If y'all could step out with Mr. Baldy, I think we do have that as part of is it a bid award coming up, or maybe in one that we just had? So we've got some action that should be pretty soon on that. At the same time, if we've got some areas out there, we can probably get it addressed. So
Okay, great. Well,
we'll make
I
sure
apologize to the Pearland Fire Department. I would have put my dress uniform on, but after 17 years of retirement, it's shrunk. So
I bet you still look good in it, though.
I don't think so. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. And Lorenzo, if you'll grab a contact out there. That way we can stay in contact with the Civic Club that's out there. All right. Is that it? All right, sounds good. Moving forward in our agenda, consent agenda, I had item D and E to pull. Anybody else have anything else? Seeing none, Mr. Koza, if you would present consent agenda items A through G with the exception of D and E.
Certainly, Mayor. Excuse me. Consideration and possible action on consent agenda items A through G with the exception of D and E. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Koza,
Aye.
Member Chavia,
Aye.
Member Byram,
Aye.
Member Cade,
Aye.
Member Tuman,
Aye.
Member Patel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Carbone. The motion passes 7-0.
All right, with that, we'll turn to item D. Mr. Koza, if you go ahead and present it, please.
Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2025-23. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. With that, we'll turn it over to staff report real quick and then go to Mr. Tooman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for the purchase of a truck for the street asphalt repair crew that was agreed in the budget this year. If you have further questions, happy to entertain those.
Mr. Tooman, I'll go to you first. You pulled that.
Thanks, Victor. Thanks for stepping in tonight. So in the invoice, it basically looked like we were paying, I did see your email, but it looks like we're paying MSRP, and then essentially there was no fleet discount. There was nothing on it. And then when we got to the bottom of the invoice, it had, I think the tax discount, and then it had a $400 fee for the buy board. So I don't understand the $400 fee for the buy board, number one, because I thought that was supposed to save us money. And then, so my question is, are we paying full price? Are we not getting a discount? And then secondly, is there not a Ford dealership here in town where we can buy trucks locally? And then finally, the $400 fee from the buy board.
Thank you, Mayor. I will ask Lorenzo, our Director of EPW, to comment on that.
Yeah, so the buy board fee is customary, so that's standard practice for buy board purchases. They do have 4 dealerships in town. We just can't go directly and purchase the vehicles from them. Once we hit a certain threshold, there's procurement requirements that we still have to follow. So typically, once we hit that threshold, we have to either go out and get multiple bids or put it on the street for bidding purposes. When we buy vehicles off the co-op, the bidding portion is essentially done for us through that process that the co-op's already gone through. And so we get the pricing that's shown on the pricing list.
So are you saying we got bids for this one vehicle?
No, so this would have been a buy board contract. So this particular vendor is a buy board vendor that sells the vehicles through that buy board contract.
So everything we purchase through buy board has a fee?
Yes, is that right?
In some cases, yes, there are fees with tips with Texas Buy Board, HGAC. They will charge us for the participant or participating in the cooperative purchase. But that's not always the case. But for something like this, we typically expect to pay a fee.
Okay, and then, so we're adding a truck, and I know this is for our new help with our paving, but I've also asked repeatedly, we keep acquiring assets and vehicles and equipment, but we still are not cutting loose of anything. All of our machinery and I know that you said it was coming, but I still haven't seen it. And so as the tires go flat and the batteries go dead and they weather more and they become less valuable, are we going to be getting rid of some of our?
Yeah, yes, council member. So we have gotten rid of some vehicles that were kind of standing on our property for a while, and Gov Deals was our service provider there, and I believe we got rid of 25 or 26 items. The lion's share of those were vehicles. So we're getting back into the practice of regularly participating in the auction process.
So that's already been done?
Yes, sir. That took place, closed December the 16th.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Koza?
Thank you, Mayor. So kind of to follow on Member Tooman's comments there, looking at the summary here on the vehicle, to me, looking at it, I would say the most part we're pretty much paying MSRP. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, with the exception of the small discount that they gave.
Well, you had a 1,900. I mean, it was a destination charge of about $19.95, and then a discount concession of $19.45. Which, if you want to say that washes it out, you're getting your destination charge for free. But I mean, the vehicle itself, the purchase is MSRP is the way I would look at it. Right. Is that normally what we pay for? Is MSRP?
It's all contingent upon what discounts are available through the buy board at the time.
Okay, but I mean, as far as to me, in my experience in purchasing vehicles, I normally work up from invoice, not down from MSRP. So kind of like what Member Tooman's concern was, we're, to me, overpaying on this vehicle.
So it's difficult to say that because, again, typically if we were buying the vehicles, we would go to buy board, and they have their rates set based on whatever buy board's discounted prices are.
Right.
So the only difference would be if we would have put it on the street and we would bid it out.
Right. That's what I'm questioning is why would we go to a buy board with an MSRP price versus taking bids?
So the difference would be that we would have to set the specs. Of essentially, you'd get the same spec sheet that you'd get here, but you could still have some variation in price across the different vendors. There's no guarantee that you get a cheaper price, but you'd get just some variation of prices across your different bidders that responded back.
I understand that. Just to me, paying MSRP on a vehicle is, I don't know, something that seems a little different. So it's just my opinion.
Well, it seems like we should at least get a fleet discount.
Some kind of discount.
We're getting the $400 buy.
I mean, we within the last 6 months, we spent 1.9 million on 39 vehicles. And so, I mean, to me, it just, I don't know, some type of discount, whatever it might be.
Any other questions, comments? All good questions, all good comments, concerns? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Member Chavadilla?
No.
Member Byram?
Aye.
Member Cade?
No.
Member Tooman?
No.
Member Patel?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Carbone?
No. No.
The motion fails 1 to 6.
All right, back to the drawing board. With that, we'll move to item E. Mr. Koza, if you present it as well.
Certainly, Mayor, consideration and possible action, resolution number R2025-22, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Quick staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for the purchase through a cooperative program for fire alarm monitoring, safety inspection, and fire alarm repair services from Firetron.
With that, Mr. Tooman, you pulled this? Oh, Mr. Patel?
Thank you, Mayor. So the question I have, I guess the contract is for $61,835, correct? And it's estimated the repair cost will be $89,490. Is that correct? Okay. So what was the cost last year for this contract? Because I guess you guys are giving us a 3-year pass, but it's a lump sum. What repair was and what the estimated monitoring cost, inspection cost would be. So what's the increase from last year's fixed cost and what this year's, comparing that?
Yes, Mayor. Joel, do you have that to hand?
So this is a fire alarm item, right?
Yes.
Firetron.
Yes.
So one of the biggest differences is there's some deficiencies that are outstanding on the list from Firetron that we need to get repaired. So those items are really what's driving a big portion of the cost increase.
Oh, we don't have that listed items here on this contract, do we?
Not specifically outlined, no, sir. But it would be something that they would have as part of the standard services. So if we had an alarm panel or some additional fire extinguishers that we had to add to buildings, then those would be covered under this contract.
So when we go, Lorenzo, when we go to page 13, can we get to page 13 on this package you guys sent? So you guys list all the locations that they're going to be servicing, but I guess, you know, in our business, we do inspections as well annually. And for example, let's look at fire station number 2 or 1, whatever you want to look at. They say 1 annual inspection of fire extinguishers. Normally, it's based on a fire extinguisher. How many extinguishers are in that building? Do you know?
No, sir, I'm not sure.
So I guess the question is, in a fire station 1, based on the size that I've seen, maybe 6 fire extinguishers, would that be fair? So I'm just doing simple math. I guess in my mind, I'm trying to figure out, we're going to pay $240 flat, whether the building has 1 or 2 extinguishers or 6 extinguishers. Wouldn't it be cheaper just to buy new ones every year and just throw these out?
Well,
Like, it doesn't give you details. It's very, very broad. And the other thing is, you know, to me, the costs are inflated because in a fire extinguisher, I mean, a fire station, which is pretty small, just to do an annual inspection of fire alarm system, they're testing the smoke detectors. I can guarantee you there may probably be maybe about 12, 15 smoke detectors. $550 seems very expensive. Same thing with the sprinkler system. These are really expensive prices from my experience. And so that cost is coming at $61,000. Now you're telling me there's an $89,000 repair bill, but we don't know what they're repairing and what the cost is.
Right. So some of the repair costs are costs that we know right now are still on the list of things that need to be completed. And then the other remaining portion of the budget is for additional repair costs that we haven't come across.
Fair. I don't disagree with. but I guess my cost, the ones that we do know, we don't have any kind of details here, what the additional cost would be, right? Since you already know it, we don't know what they're going to charge, because based on what I see starting on page 13, going down to page 18, just for inspections is $61,000, which I'm telling you in my experience is very inflated, because you don't have details of what amount they're inspecting. You would think a contract like this would be a lot more cost effective.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
Also on the list, the annual fire extinguisher inspections, most of them are $240. Almost all of them are, but then just some of them are more than that. What drives the cost to be more? Like the new surface water treatment plant, $960. Some of them are $420. I can't figure it out because it's not even double, or it's not a multiple of 240, so I'm confused.
So which one were you referencing? The new surface water plant?
That one, and also on Reflection Bay, all buildings, $420. Reflection Bay sludge, $650. Oh no, that's fire alarm. Sorry. Reflection Bay, all buildings is $420. Convention, no. Which one? Where was the other one? It's different. Those two.
So if you guys don't mind, I can bring the vendor up to the podium and have them explain the prices.
I think what might be better, and I'm going to suggest this to the council. What's our time frame of must-have and need for this?
So we have current outstanding items that we need to get inspected. So these prices should be based on the TIPS contract that's already out there. So I'd have to double check with the vendor. If y'all allow them to come to the podium, they may be able to explain some of this.
Well, I'm sensing we're going to have a problem approving this tonight. What I think it would be better is we postpone this to February the 10th, and these questions and concerns buttoned up, and we understand what these costs truly are. And to Member Patel's point, if we feel like there's something, for example, I'm looking here, Reflection Bay annual inspection of fire alarm, $650. What's entailed in that? A little more detailing of that. And I understand we've got some things, in the field working, but I don't think if you have a straight up vote tonight, you're going to get an approval.
So right now, we don't currently have a contract. So we actually need the contract in place. And once we get the contract in place, then we can go to the vendor and request the quotes from them.
That doesn't make sense.
So we just recently extended the latest contract that we had, and we extended it for the additional 25%, the maximum amount that we could extend, to continue to get that, to continue to have these inspections and these things done and completed. We've reached the extension, the life of that contract. So this contract now needs to be renewed because we can't extend it any further than we already have.
I think what the mayor's saying is we're going to vote it down. Do you want us to vote it down, or do you want to postpone it?
No, Mr. Mayor, we'll postpone it and bring it back as you suggest.
Sorry, just to be blunt.
I mean, that's where we're headed. And lesson learned: don't wait till the last second to bring this in here. So I need a motion.
Make a motion to postpone to the February 10th meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, not debatable. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, postpone it. Yes.
Lorenzo, the current contract we're working under, when does it expire?
It is already, excuse me, it's already terminated. It's expired.
January 1?
Give me 1 second. Let's see.
So it is expired. It's not expiring.
No, it expired probably mid-January, so last week, a couple weeks ago, January 16th.
All right.
All right, so with that, we will, we've handled all matters removed from the consent agenda. With that, we'll move to public hearing number 1. Vance, are you leading it tonight?
I'm not. So I'm joined tonight by Katja, who will be presenting this item.
All right, thank you. You'll put into the record the reason for the public hearing and then move into the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This is the first public hearing for a request by Will Benson, applicant on behalf of JM Projects, LLC, owner for approval of a zone change for 7.573 acres of land from heavy industrial district to general commercial district. This property is generally located at the northwest corner of Main Street and Bailey Road. The applicant submitted this zoning application to allow for commercial uses to be developed. Going into public comments, prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, staff did not receive any responses to this case, and similarly, leading up to tonight's meeting, staff has not received any public comments. This next slide shows the current zoning classification, an aerial view of the property and adjacent properties. To the north and west is zoned M2 with undeveloped land. To the south is zoned GC with undeveloped land, and to the east across Main Street is GC and is developed with Pearland High School. This slide shows the future land use map. The subject property is primarily designated as the commercial center place type. However, there are small portions in the southwest corner of the property that are within the business park place type and the mixed use center place type. The proposed GC district is consistent with the commercial center place type. And moving on to staff analysis. The requested GC district meets the approval criteria for a zone change. Staff recommended approval of the requested zone change, and P&Z voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the zone change. That concludes staff presentation. I'll pass it back to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you for that. I see Will here. Do you have a presentation?
Self-explanatory. The main crux of this is looking at the future land use plan and complementing and adhering to that future land use plan with this zone change case.
All right, sounds good. We may have some questions when we get to questions and comments from the council. Moving forward in the public hearing, we'll ask for those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request can go to the podium, give your name and address, and we have 3 minutes to speak. Second attempt, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Third and final time, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Seeing none, we'll turn it over to council for questions, comments, concerns. Del?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, welcome back. Hey, do you guys have any kind of idea of what you guys are going to develop and any kind of?
Yeah, great question, Councilmember Patel. We are looking at commercial uses that are more in a retail flavor. These are from uses that are restaurants, retail strip center type uses, single tenants, as well as some multi-tenant type uses. One being from one group that we won't necessarily disclose their name, but it is a retail restaurant in nature, already has a presence here in the community, is looking to expand and further their business here. They like the high school being right across the street. This area has matured over the last 20 years with other neighborhoods in the area as well as businesses. And so we feel like it's a good timing for this project to come to fruition. And part of that is having this zone change that facilitates that.
Just real quick, Will, would it be possible before the second hearing to send some kind of a layout of what this layout would look in the site plan?
Yeah, I think we could do that for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we'll forward that along to staff, and you guys can share that with council as right when we send that. Yeah.
Sure. And I know TABC will have to control this, but you're not planning on building bars across that school, right?
At the present time, we've had 0 requests from anybody that's looking at that. But you're exactly right. Yeah, the TABC would play into that from the port to port, from doors to their front.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing and move to new business item number 1. Ms. Chavarria, would you present that, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, first reading of ordinance number 2000M-267. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We've had staff report as well as questions, comments from council. Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Chavadilla?
Aye.
Member Byram?
Aye.
Member Cade?
No.
Member Tuman?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Carbone?
Aye.
Member Koza?
Aye.
The motion passes 6-1.
All right, sounds good. We'll welcome this February the second reading for that. Moving forward in our agenda, council discussion regarding staff report on Winter Storm Enzo. I'll turn this over to Victor and the gang. I went ahead and asked, since we had emergency action last week and Emergency Operations Center being opened up, that we at least have the opportunity to present to the public and to the council a few of the stats and kind of what went on during the emergency action. So with that, Victor, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Mayor. Just at the outset, I would say that our response to the winter storm is another example of the effectiveness of our emergency preparedness measures. I'll hand over to Ron Fraser and Eric Hammond to give us a quick report.
Thank you, Victor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So in review of the city response to Winter Storm Enzo, it's beneficial to review the history associated with our responses to winter weather in the past. If you recall, Winter Storm Uri in February of 2021 left a large portion of Pearland without electricity for an extended period. While we did not engage an incident management team for Winter Storm Uri, the incident still mandated a large response by the city. This oversight resulted in communications and coordination challenges, which degraded our ability to address infrastructure and human challenges. The power outage resulted in significant damage incurred by citizens with broken pipes and vegetative debris. On the city level, the city suffered power loss at critical infrastructure locations coupled with generator failures and a loss of water pressure, and a number of city staff engaged without logistical support. The shortcomings experienced with Winter Storm Uri resulted in an after-action report, the LEAF generator study, and expenditures made to harden our infrastructure. Also, additional training with our staff to improve our overall response to weather events. On January 15th, we received a forecast and noted the confidence for the potential for frozen precipitation starting on January 20th was high. Mr. Epperson assigned Eric Hammond as incident commander for this response, and he immediately started to build his team and make certain that appropriate preparations were made to assist in our response to any hazard we might face. I'd like to introduce Eric Hammond, who will detail the actions of his team in response to Enzo.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for an opportunity to share a few highlights over our recent winter storm. I'll start with echoing Mr. Fraser's comments that the success that we realized from this most recent event wasn't a result of work conducted and energies applied just in the past week. This was a result of years and years and years of building and improving, honing, building and improving from lessons learned in prior events, solid investments, and work on critical infrastructure to get us to this point. So as indicated, an Arctic blast threatened the Pearland community with an evening arrival of February 20th, Martin Luther King Day, and was intended to remain in our area all the way through the 22nd, impacting us with the potential for sustained freezing temperatures and the potential for service interruption. In order to be better prepared, the Office of Emergency Management did place a call to myself on January 15th. That was the Tuesday prior to intended impact. So we could begin the preparedness conversations and develop an incident management team. From that moment, a team, many of whom sit around me currently, were called and leveraged to staff our incident management team, and all of which who are capable of overcoming any of the uncertainties that we anticipated would impact us, and then ultimately help us champion through a storm that became a historic winter storm, Enzo. We assembled a highly capable team ranging from logistics, communications, planning, operations, Office of Emergency Management, situational units, documentation units, safety, finance, and liaison as well. Concurrent to the incident management team development, individual department emergency management plans were all being pulled off the shelf, and teams were reviewing those action plans and placing action upon each of those to ensure the fullest level of their individual preparations. Items in those lists and in those emergency action plans range from personal home preparations, so that a way when staff are here, they're mentally focused and able to ensure that we're preserving the intent of our community and our stakeholders. That included things from standby generation inspection and testings, fuel filling and supplemental fuel orderings. Stakeholder connections were being made, such as our colleagues in BDD4 and TxDOT, CenterPoint Energy, and several others across the state. Mobility mitigation, such as sanding our bridges and deploying message boards to ensure our community was aware of the potential impacts were being done. Sharing of staff policies from our HR department, making sure that the teams were equipped and knew what would be coming, especially since we had a holiday upon us and weekend preparations. We convened leadership meetings for ongoing situational awareness, developed staff rosters, and scheduled those team members so we knew who was going to deploy when and where. Crafted communications regarding our community posture and made sure that our team members were well equipped and informed. And then additionally, we made sure that all critical infrastructure winterizing efforts were ongoing and completed prior to impact. So after much deliberation and based on the potential for impact, the team did determine that it was necessary to activate the EOC. We established emergency operation period and planned to staff the city 24/7 with responders and support personnel from January 20 through January 22. And despite the holiday and long weekend, the men and women around me and many who are represented by those in this room showed up prepared and ready to endure anything that we had to overcome. So kudos to the team. Because we started this operational period on Martin Luther King Day and honor that historic day, we did turn to the last book that Dr. King wrote in 1967 while having a conversation in our EOC. That book was appropriate, titled, "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" And I can assure you that the steps that this team had taken in the way of preparation and the stacking of hands solidified their desire not to lean towards chaos, but to truly make sure that this community was taken care of, well poised and well prepared. It was the intent of the incident management team to determine a compass heading for us as we navigated this storm. A few of those items that helped steer this response activity included maximizing public safety and the safety of response personnel, maintain continuity of critical infrastructure and services, maintain emergency response services, document response activity for potential reimbursement, and keep the community, team members, and stakeholders aware of our critical information and apprised throughout the event, just to name a few. I am happy to report that although enduring upwards of 3 inches of snow and ice within our community, the team sustained no staff injuries throughout the entire operation. We maintained fuel necessary to sustain all of our response activities. We were prepared with operational services. We had all of our gen sets were winterized and backed up and ready to go and tested. And although we were blessed by not sustaining a power outage through CenterPoint Energy, we maintained that critical infrastructure and that power was sustained throughout the event. We were ready in the event we needed to overcome power obstacles. The team conveyed timely messaging via social media, web pages, and other outlets such as Everbridge, which we believe did help keep people off the streets. And that step then ultimately helped make sure that our response for emergency services, law, PD, fire, EMS, were lower than anticipated because of good messaging. We maintained provision of emergency services to our community, again, the PD, fire, and EMS. And while we knew that we needed to respond, the team, being embedded with risk, safety, and operations, were able to make strategic decisions that modified what our response looked like. In the event of rolling a fire apparatus, maybe we had the opportunity to just roll an EMS truck or a brush truck and still provide the same level of service while not putting as many responders in harm's way or jeopardizing our assets and inventory. So we were also positioned and staffed to open a warming shelter at the rec center that had EMS and PD staff in it at all times. In the event power did diminish and we needed to turn on a warming center and make sure our community was taken care of. And although we were impacted by ice to the point of closing our 4 main bridges, which is Magnolia, Bailey, McCard, and Pearland Parkway, the team did work with PISD. They did mitigate our mobility concerns. We were able to keep mobility across the community. And then moreover, when the school district was ready to activate back to normal business, the team was able to make sure that the PISD's 2 main bridges, Bailey and Magnolia, were open and operational and safe, not only for bus traffic, but for those young drivers that are out there getting to those locations. We were able to maintain all critical infrastructure to sustain key services. The good folks to my right here, water, wastewater, lift stations, distribution, no interruptions to any of those services at all. And then lastly, and some would challenge most importantly, we were able to make sure through logistics that each one of those responders were well fed, had a place, a safe harbor, they could rest, they could get the reprieve they needed. So when it was time to be called back up to duty, they were ready to go each time. Additionally, I will add that the team responded to 78 private water leaks in our community, 29 instances of no water in homes due to ice within their own private service lines, 1 damaged fire hydrant and water main repair, and over 26 proactive calls for water meter turn-ons and turn-offs. And so as I begin to close out, I'll share that success is intentional. It's not accidental. We have grown from past activations, but inevitably we do have lessons to learn from this event. We understand that. We'll work in partnership with our Office of Emergency Management, with our department directors, and we'll, again, hone our skills once more with those new lessons learned. So with that, I'll say thank you, Mayor and Council, for having the confidence in this team. I'll say thank you to the team, all the men and women who responded, and I'll turn it back over to Chief for closeout.
We're available for your questions. Like Mr. Hammond said, success is intentional. I told him we'd rather be good than lucky. And I think that this was a good example of how we were for this response. We're available for your questions if you have any.
All right, we'll open up to council for any questions, comments along the way. Mr. Byram?
I just wanted to say when I saw this come up on our agenda, I was glad to see it. And the first thing that came to mind for me was, well, good job. You know, I think you guys did an excellent job, both internally and externally. Communication was great. Josh, you and your team did an excellent job as well. So, you know, it was just a good example of how our community really worked together and how great of a staff we have. We got to recognize our police previously, and we got to recognize our fire department tonight, but we also get to recognize our staff, that you guys really did an excellent job. And I think communication and Mr. Mayor being out and making videos in the snow so that people could be educated on how to deal with this. It's not normal for us. So that was the first thing that came to mind when I saw this. And just, I appreciate you guys and the effort y'all went through and the level of excellence that you brought to this scenario. So thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Any questions? I'm going to echo Member Byram, but specifically, Eric, great job. You were tabbed with that. I don't know if it's an honor or an oh me or a uh-oh or what when you get tabbed as the incident commander, but you certainly rose to it and you did a great job, and everybody that was there. So, you know, I had the opportunity to go into the OC during events like this, and you get to see the team work together. Fortunately for this one, the lights stayed on. 4 years ago, we weren't that lucky. We knew it was going to be cold. We just didn't know the lights weren't going to come on come Monday morning when we all got up. And so it made all the world of difference. But I will say, I also want to say to our public, anybody that's listening, that's in this room or watching online, our public did a great job as well. They heeded the warnings. They stayed off the street. That minimized damage. It minimized property loss. It minimized human value of being hurt. And so with the exception of those that might have rolled down the hill at Independence Park or maybe slipped and slided around the hill having some fun, our community did a good job. And I also want to commend our staff for working with our ISD to give them some certainty in knowing when to open up and how to open up, and that there would be clear passage to get there. I know that's not easy. We're not built for this. We don't have the equipment for this. And so I even said this in one of my videos, we're not built for this. And so it's easier and cheaper for everybody to just sit, let it pass over, and then get back to normal rather than slipping and sliding all over the road. So, but kudos to everybody involved. Peter and his team for bringing the vision of the whole incident command to us and having the opportunity to advance it. And each one of these actions, we get better and better because we learn from it. As you said in your comments, Eric, that you hone your skills, then you get better, and there's always going to be a problem that gets presented in the midst of it that we didn't necessarily plan for, but we have the team ready, willing, and able to go and handle it. So great job by everybody involved, from the public all the way through our staff. So it was kind of nice when you looked up and there was virtually no calls overnight. That meant the messaging with communications and everyone else, and quite frankly, the news media helped, of everybody staying off the road and staying home and sitting tight. So thank you for that. With that, we'll move to the next item. Present it real quick. It's council discussion regarding the final report and presentation on the Pearland Transit Needs Assessment and Feasibility Study conducted by HGAC. I'll turn it over to our HGAC folks. Thank you for being here tonight, and we're going to have about an 8 or 10 minute presentation, and then questions, comments from council.
Thank you, Mayor. This study was done, started a couple of years ago, and the reason we did the study is that Pearland's grown rapidly and has varied mobility challenges that not all can necessarily be met by automobiles and vehicles. So we did a transit study when this is a method of considering what kind of public transit, not necessarily fixed route buses, but there's other kinds of transit that could be used. And we wanted to see if it was feasible, what kinds of service we could recommend. Now, this is an informational item, I should emphasize, so that it is not a one where we are saying what should be done. We're just saying, these are some information we have, these are some recommendations for your consideration, and you can take it from there. The first thing is we looked at the population, and we looked through our demographics group, and the actual and projected growth is very substantial. Growth slows around 2030, but the projected growth in 2040 shows that Pearland is going to be a city of larger population and more densely populated than it is in 2010. What we looked at in assessing transit feasibility of five factors. The first factor was prior studies and reports that we had done or had been done by other groups. We looked at peer analysis. We looked at transit needs. We looked at travel demand for employees from Pearland to other cities, specifically, most prominently Houston. And we looked most importantly at community sentiment. What did the community want and what did the community needed? And what we found in this, that they sort of moved together fairly well. And the first one we did, and this is a little hard to read, is we had a variety of different studies. But if you look through them, you will see that along with commuter transit, of commuter service, there's a lot of recommendations for that in different studies done for different purposes. And then the same thing is you find a lot of recommendations for demand response service, which is dial-a-ride service. Metro Lift is the service that they have in Metro. Fort Bend Transit has a dial-a-ride service as well. Next thing, we looked at peer cities. What are some of the other cities or locations similar to Pearland doing. And we looked at Fort Bend Transit, the Woodlands. We looked at some places in North Texas, Arlington, Denton, Carrollton. We looked at Abilene. We went out of state and looked at Peoria. And then we added a couple others who had some new services, Pflugerville and Kyle in Central Texas. So we looked at them, and they all were doing some sort of transit service. They were seeing that it was feasible for them to do some sort of service. So they did that. The transit needs for Pearland are lower than the overall region, but Pearland still has a significant level of needs based on the income, the age, aging in place, increasing levels of disability that have inched up over the years. The relative population density means that fixed route and the way that the city is aligned, fixed route service would be difficult to succeed, but other transit types are feasible, and other transit types have been shown in the peer analysis to be successful in other suburban cities. Now, the next thing we looked at is where are people going from Pearland, and there's a lot more. Pearland is a suburban city, and more people go from Pearland to work, although there are a substantial number of people who work in Pearland who live elsewhere, but the numbers still are far higher and far more concentrated for people who are commuting from Pearland. And the two locations, and they're probably ones that you've heard of before, are the Texas Medical Center and the Houston downtown. The Texas Medical Center is easily the largest one, but the downtown is second. There are some others with significant numbers, but the numbers for those two are much higher. The final thing we looked at is we wanted to look at what the Pearland community liked. And we had an online survey, and we had 2,300 residents of Pearland respond, which was a very encouraging response. 56% of the residents favored public transit, while 44% did not want transit in the community. But then when we asked the question whether there would be transit for persons with disabilities and seniors, the favorability went up to 75% from 56%. We had 2 rounds of public meetings in 23 and 24, and they were attended by over 100 residents. They were on-site meetings and online meetings. In the second round of meetings in 24, when we presented the alternatives, what we found was that the favorability to the type of transit alternatives we were suggesting was favorable. With the responses we got on the website, which was on our engagehgac.com website, were surprisingly universally favorable towards transit alternatives that we proposed. There were concerns also voiced about some better mobility options that could be done. So the preliminary findings, we've just summarized. The community's grown rapidly. It's a low suburban city. Pearland has a high level of service between 288 and the medical center. And you can see the fixed route service does not do well. So we really, when we looked at what we would consider recommending, we went away from that. Now, there is existing service in the city of Pearland. It's done, which should best be called by a Lifeline service, which is called Harris County Rides, which is from Harris County. Transit provides the service, but they provide it under contract to the Gulf Coast Transit District, which provides the service, in turn provides the service of Pearland. It's one of these grant situations that moves along that happens. Up to 3,000 people in the trips a year, not people, trips a year can be provided by it. And the service will match up to $21 a trip. In other words, a person has to pay $21 out of pocket to do a $42 trip. So it can be costly. As such, it can be difficult for people with limited incomes to use the service. What we recommended is that Pearland go with what's known as an on-demand transit service, which is somewhat similar to Uber or Lyft with a contribution or an underwriting by the city towards the cost of that, and when some of the costs could be also borne by federal grants. Microtransit or ride hailing, and I'll talk a little bit more about those, are two of the possible options for the on-demand service. Now, that's for service within the city of Pearland. The city and the intercity service, the more traditional commuter bus service, such as the service that's run from Fort Bend Transit to downtown in the medical center or the Woodlands to the same locations, would be the type of service that we would recommend for consideration. You'd use either a turnkey private or public provider to provide the service, and a location near 288 would need to be determined for the park and ride. The west side is definitely the area that would service best. The cost for operating only would be approximately $700,000. With grants and passenger fares, the local share would be about $76,000. That does not include capital costs or maintenance costs. So we only included the operating costs. Microtransit, which uses advanced technologies or mobile applications such as transportation networking companies, and this has become very, very commonly used in a lot of suburban cities to provide transit services rather than using fixed route services. Involves 2 to 7 passengers. It costs a lot up front. The local share may be able to be brought down with the use of federal grants. We can't, it's not a guarantee, but some of our estimates could bring it down to around $362 for a local share. These are, I should emphasize, these are the estimates. As far as ride hailing goes, ride hailing is a little more expensive up front because the amount of, you're purchasing trips, just like you would purchase trips on a ride hailing like Uber or Lyft. You're not purchasing vehicles to provide the service, which is what microtransit does. It's vehicles to provide the service. Ride hailing provides service for individual trips. So the costs were a little bit different. And again, these are very rough estimates that could change based on factors of these going out for bid or different, or all sorts of different factors in terms of time and when these are actually, if and when they were actually done. One last thing we did was some cost-benefit analysis. For microtransit and ride-hailing, because there's not a lot of emissions benefits or safety benefits that can be realized by using small vehicles, parking benefits, the cost-benefit analysis is under 1. The benefits that have to be seen as community benefits to the people who need the service. And so that's rarely where the benefits come in for microtransit and ride-hailing. For park and ride on the west, the benefits, those benefits do accrue, and you do have we did estimate a positive benefit based on the cost we'd shown earlier of almost 3.7 per dollar. Next slide. That concludes my information. I'm the project manager, and the project website has all the information and all the information if anybody would want to look at it further. And I'll be glad to take any questions or comments.
Sounds good. Alan, thank you for that. Before we do, Victor, I know this is a workshop, direction, what is staff looking for tonight from council?
Mayor, we're not asking you for anything tonight. This was just to share the initial findings from the study. Happy to answer questions, but it's not an action item.
Yeah, I know it's not an action item, but just trying to see where we're trying to head with it. So with that, we'll throw it open to council for any questions, comments. Mr. Byram?
Victor, can we expect to talk about this in more detail at strategic planning? Will this be a topic of conversation then?
That could be, if that's your wish.
It would be mine. Yeah, I mean, as a concept, I struggle with this a little bit, and I appreciate the cost-benefit analysis that you put on here, and I appreciate the transparency on it to say that this is the cost-benefit analysis if we get federal help. I'm not a huge fan of doing anything that requires federal help in our community. There's always a chance federal help goes away, and then suddenly we have this big, massive thing that we've agreed to fund for our community that we don't have help with. And so that's something that definitely concerns me. But if we're going to get into more detail at strategic planning, we'll talk about it then. But I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Good deal. Mr. Patel?
Thank you, Mayor. Alan, I don't know if you were part of it, but I remember, Mayor, you may remember, several years ago, we had a bus service trying to take people from Pearland, and it failed.
It was, but I was also gonna. It was before my time as mayor. So what I don't know, and Mayor Pro Tem, you may remember the date. I think COVID may have driven some of that down. I can't remember if it was during COVID, right before COVID that it started, or if it was a year or so before. I couldn't remember the time. I'm with you. I remember that, and it was a park and ride service.
It was, and I thought it was before COVID because I was on EDC when we tried that, and I believe this EDC may have funded it, and I don't know if Matt's here. No, but it was during that time I think they had started it, and it went on for I don't know maybe a year or two, and then they just couldn't get enough ridership.
Yeah, so it was actually a no cost to the city pilot. It was Coach that originally started it, and I believe they sold that portion, or it was Kerrville Bus Company, and they sold to Coach. That's what happened. And ridership was low. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, the cost for ride was relatively high because it wasn't being subsidized by anything. It was a proof of concept for them as a business venture, and it didn't work out. They were going to medical center in downtown, and the volume just wasn't there to justify the concept.
Yeah, it was in 2019, and it was discontinued in 2020, and obviously COVID was. But to your point, it didn't, even before COVID, it didn't live up to what people.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Alan, I live on the west side, and I know a lot of my neighbors commute. They're probably majority of the people who are commuting to medical center, and I think. Even though it costs you an arm to get to medical center using the toll now, I think it's just. I think the issue, even in the previous, was everybody wants it when they want to go. Right, the timing is always the concern. It's like, hey, I want to be there now. I want to get start moving, and I think that's the biggest concern that I remember when it started back in 19 was, hey, I don't want to be stuck on time. And not having enough people on the same time, so they're empty buses coming back and forth. And I think that's the challenge. But again, community has changed tremendously because we have huge amount of growth now south of us that may be able to also somehow tie into it. And how do we do that? I think that's one of the questions. How do we get all these homes down in Meridiana to tie into this process? Because I think then the volume becomes a lot, ridership becomes better. Just my thought.
That's a very valid comment. That there's definitely a issue involved with people wanting to go when they want to go. A lot of that could have to do with the frequency of how many runs you had. If you have a run every 10 minutes, or if you have a run every 30 minutes, that's a big difference. And so things like that can have a big difference. And as far as just referring back to the whole situation with the Coach bus park and ride, COVID was devastating to commuter service throughout this region and throughout the country because people weren't going to work, people weren't using commuter service. It just went down 95% everywhere. So it was no one really had a chance in 2020 to start a commuter service.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. If I recall, it was headed down pre-COVID. Just because of the ridership. Can we go back one slide? I know that 3.7 that makes it look like this park and ride's got a good cost benefit. Could you walk us through, like, was it $7.4 million in travel time saving? Like, how do we get there, and is that real benefit, or is this?
This is a harder benefit. It's harder to quantify the on-demand, demand response type of services. These services go because there's a lot of work that's been done in that area. So as a result of that, travel time savings has been documented. Our modeling group at HGAC is the one who came up with these numbers, and they based it on modeling numbers that basically said that these will reduce the emissions, reduce the safety benefits. You have fewer crashes because fewer people are driving and more people are taking buses, which are inherently safer. Your fare box income is a benefit because it reduces the cost of it. The parking benefit, well, parking costs a lot more for the consumer at the medical center than it would to do a round trip. We were looking at a fare at this around $4 rather than which the prior company was providing, which was about $6.50, $7.50 a trip. That's just too high for this area. It won't work. $4, and then you figure, well, that's an $8 round trip. It could cost me $20 to park in the medical center or downtown. That right there is saving you money. And that's a benefit. And you total them all, and then the operating and maintenance costs we basically discount for between 2026 and 2040, and so that gives us the costs are for all 15 years, and they're discounted. I believe it's a 7% discount, and so. The numbers there are for the park and ride are pretty solid. The numbers also are solid for the ride hailing and the microtransit, but there's just not the parking benefits and the emissions benefits and the travel time savings benefits because those are going to be about the same, and it's a wash. There could be some emission vehicles if you use zero emission vehicles. There could be some emission benefits for microtransit, but it's small. But the emissions benefits for commuter transit are well documented, and are we've at HJC we run a congestion mitigation air quality program, and we're running a pilot program with Fort Bend Transit right now, and we're showing very substantial air quality emission savings as a result of the fact that they're running. I believe about 28 buses a day on their service.
Yeah, thank you. And so when you walk through this, really, when we look at true dollars, we're going to bring in 2.9 in fare box income, and it's going to cost us 5.9 in O&M, which doesn't include capital. So there's a $3 million delta there.
Yeah.
And so just teeing it up for Saturday's discussion when everybody's gung-ho, there's a huge gap there. And it takes factoring in all these other benefits. So I guess the takeaway is don't walk away with this 3.7. That's a great ratio. If we're ready to dump $3 million to close the gap, then okay. But that's more the discussion. And we just couldn't get there last time. And we tried. John Branson, I think that was one of his last projects on his way out, and he did a good job trying to make it work, and we couldn't get there.
Any other questions, comments?
I don't know that we got to it in here, but in our packet, the agenda packet, page 21. I don't know if we can pull that up or not. I don't know, I feel like the data is a little, not necessarily misleading, but a little difficult to to grasp if you look at this. So yeah, so the online response is, would you consider using transit from Pearland? If you scroll up just a little bit, it says 57% indicated they would use such service. But I think if you actually look at this chart and the different categories, it speaks a little bit to what Member Patel was talking about. Obviously, it jumps right out at you. The largest number is the largest bar is I would not use it, right? Then you kind of work your way up, and less than 25% said they would absolutely, or right at 25% said they would absolutely use it. The majority of people, the way I see this graph, and I guess you can help me understand it if I'm looking at it wrong, but the majority of people were either against it or might use it maybe. But it kind of seems like it's being presented as though most people are wanting it.
Well, let me sort of distinguish. Most people most people in the survey indicated favorability towards transit service, more than not. But a lot of the people who were favorable to it wouldn't use it. They just thought it would be a good idea to have it.
Well, and I appreciate your candor with that, because that's a really important distinction. Yeah. Like, it's a good idea, but I won't use it.
Yeah. So. A lot of it, it's like, I mean, one of the things I've been in the transit's planning for many, many years. It's like broccoli. People say it's good for you, but do I want to eat broccoli?
Right.
So it's the same type of thing.
And I would say that's consistent with what I've heard from the community, personally, is people saying, I don't want to see buses running all over my city. I don't want those kind of things. And member Carbone, to your point, again, 3.7 million might look good, but that's only with Fed assistance, and that doesn't include a lot of other things. But when we get into Saturday's discussion, I think we very well may have other much higher priorities that we need to spend resources on versus something that people may or may not use. And anything that we agree to spend is taxpayer dollars from everyone in the community. So putting in a transit system that all the taxpayers are funding, that maybe we'll have 3,000 rides a year on it, I think that's going to be a difficult hill to climb, personally.
Yeah, I want to echo some of those comments, but I think from my standpoint, the only thing, and I'm not looking at necessarily how do we implement and how do we go do this. The only thing I would be interested in right now is figuring out how that other question, that next question, for elderly, disabled, they need to get to the med center somehow, some way. How do we bridge that? How do we get there? And that is, and I don't know if that's using, maybe the power of the city with negotiating, some kind of a rate with, like you said, the ride hailing, not necessarily microtransit, but the ride hailing, where we get somebody like Lyft or Uber that, if it's one of those calls and it's a special way, there's a special discounted rate for people to go and pay. Again, not necessarily that we pay, but we help devise a program for them to go and utilize. Because I think the hard lift for us is, when you drive out of here and you hit a pothole and we're struggling to get some of our streets fixed, I can't see us going and spending $3 million putting a program together to make that happen. At the same time, though, if we can figure out a program that really doesn't cost us anything, that helps give discounted rates to our people to be able to go into the med center or something like that, that might be worth our time, having a say so. But I look forward to any other discussions that we have, coming up in the future. I know this is part of the required. We've got to get some feedback as well as present the final study to council. Last and final.
Sorry, you just mentioned that. Is there anything in your study that would give us any indication of what the need is as far as our, elderly or disabled?
There is some transit needs analysis that we did, and it indicates that there is significant levels of need. About 2% of the population were without vehicles. You had about a 20% of lower income, which is some of the metrics we use for need. We use percentage of seniors, percentage of people 18 to 64 with disabilities, Also, we look at children aged 6 to 17 that may need transportation after school, or may have transportation issues during the weekends or other times. So those are also ones that we looked at, and that's something we use throughout the region as a means. We call it our transit needs analysis.
So it's more predictive, not necessarily we know specifically these people in our community. It's just the assumption is based on data.
It's based on census data.
The reason I ask is because I know that there's a lot of there's several nonprofits in our community that do ask, what are the needs in our community that we don't know about, that we could meet? And if we were able to go and say, hey, we have a population of 1,500 elderly or disabled that need transportation, maybe that's an avenue we could bridge. So I don't know if there's a way to get that data.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question, Alan. So this information you're providing is just for the city of Pearland, right? Not in the ETJ or anything south of us?
It's provided for the city of Pearland. Now, I should distinguish it because of the way the census block groups work. We had to use a study area that extended a little bit beyond, but the study is for the city of Pearland.
Okay, so I guess the growth south of us, you guys haven't done a study on that at all?
No, we have not studied the growth in Manville or any of the areas south of Pearland.
Okay.
We're aware of them.
Okay, thank you.
Good deal. All right, Alan, thank you so much for presenting. Staff, do you have, Victor, anything follow up? Okay, more to come. Thank you for being out tonight. Thank you for the study. All right, with that, we'll move forward. Action item number 4, Mr. Carbone, would you present that, please?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, Resolution R 2025-21. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, it has been our intention for some time to carry out critical works to the Reflection Bay wastewater treatment plant to ensure that it meets the EPA guidelines. Our plan had been to do that over a number of years. However, the EPA has intervened and made it very clear to us that their expectation is that these works are carried out immediately. So we are looking to accelerate the plans that we had in place and to carry out these works now. The total bill for that is just over 3.5 million that's on the item before you tonight. I would strongly recommend, sir, that we proceed with this to ensure that we meet the expectations of the EPA.
All right, we'll throw it open to questions, comments from council. Ms. Chavarria?
Thank you, Mayor. So has EPA provided us with a deadline for corrective action plan?
I'll ask Mr. Sones, our Director of Utilities, to comment on that.
Member Chavarria, the current status is the Environmental Protection Agency has issued an administrative order, essentially putting us on notice of pending legal action.
Okay, thank you. And then also, Victor, and I think we discussed this at a meeting on Friday, but this is cash, but it's cash from Enterprise. Is that correct?
That is correct. This will be paid for from the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Koza?
Thank you, Mayor. David, as far as this wastewater treatment plant, what is the age of it?
Well, the original plant I'm not exactly sure what the age is. It's been there for some time. It was it went through its last rehab in I believe it was completed around 2018. Around that time frame.
The west end of Pearland is approximately, give or take, 20 years old. So it can't be any older than 20 years. As far as this expenditure of $3.5 million that we're looking at here, is this normal in a 20-year-old plus or minus facility?
What we're faced with is dealing with deferred maintenance and repair that has just caught up to us. I've only, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because that's not what the intent is. We've got some inherited issues, and I've been dealing with and planning and in communication with city administration what needs to be addressed at this facility, as well as others. and we've tried. We thought we had a good plan to keep it within the confines of our annual budget. So is it normal? Not with focus on asset reliability and taking care of proactive and predictive maintenance. But in this particular case, that was less than ideal.
Okay, so with your comments there, I'm going to ask, are you saying that previously we did not maintain it the way it needed to be? Is that what I'm understanding?
That would be a good summary, yes, sir.
So moving forward, as far as with this expenditure and any others, I mean, upon us right now, we're spending somewhere in the neighborhood of 240, 250 million on Berry Rose and Longwood. As far as those, do we have something in the works? Do we have it now to prevent this from happening in the future?
Absolutely. One of my first requests after coming to Pearland was to engage and begin developing an asset reliability program with an asset reliability team. That was thankfully approved for the FY25 budget. We have an asset reliability manager that is on board, and that his direction. And he has a team of mechanics and technicians that will focus solely on protecting the investment by the ratepayers of the city of Pearland to ensure that our infrastructure is maintained properly and ensure its longevity and sustainability.
Victor, Ron, as far as 2.5 years that I've been here on council, to me it's been something that's kind of evident within the city of Pearland, whether previously or whatever you might say, as far as our concern for maintenance, we've had a lack thereof. Chief Taylor will agree with me. This one thing, when I was sitting on a piece of equipment at one point that we spent about $250,000 on at that meeting, we were talking afterwards, and he made a comment. He said it's not only within equipment. He said we've got problems within the fire department as far as our engines and whatnot. And I was kind of shocked that the lack of maintenance that we have, as far as with things in general in Pearland, or are we looking at maintaining? It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to maintain stuff instead of running it till it doesn't work and then say, ruh-roh, we need to fix it.
Good point, well made.
I mean, is this something citywide we're going to start taking a look at?
It's one of the reasons, Mr. Mayor, that we have the internal service funds to actually put resource into maintaining and looking after the equipment and vehicles that we have. And Mr. Jones has already referred to the asset reliability team within utilities. I would expect to see that approach being developed more widely across an EPW as well. But yeah, it's a focus. Ultimately, it's always a balance. We have to spend money on new facilities as we grow, but we should not do that at the expense of looking after that which we already have. And as I say, good point, well made and well taken by us.
Okay. I mean, like I said, 3.5 million is a big number. I want to say it bit us in the butt for not taking care of it, and basically we have a gun to our head from the federal government that if we don't take it, we'll have other reasons to have to deal with as well.
And I'll go to Ms. Cade here in just a second, but I'll also say this. I think having David here as a director of utilities, rather than just having that utility piece under Public Works and just so much scope under Public Works, but having the utility director is probably helping us with that because we have a little bit more of a focus straight right here. That doesn't take anything away from from Public Works and necessarily in days gone by. We've just outgrown where we were with that.
And I agree. I'm not trying to throw,
No, I
throw
know
shade
that.
on anybody.
I'm just saying that I think that's a benefit of where we are now.
Just the piece of equipment that shined, and as you well know, it was a $250,000 piece of equipment that we had about 1,400 hours worth.
Right.
And it looked like it went through World War II, the pictures that we saw. So what I'm trying to impress is it's much better to, when we do invest money in things, is to take care of them.
Yeah, it would have been easier to spend $350 a year over some time and not come up with 3.5 million, right now.
Right.
And I think that's some of the point that you were trying to make, David. I know you were trying to be kind to predecessors and others, but at the end of the day, what I would ask, I'll let other other council members speak for themselves, but what I would ask is when we have a legitimate need that's maintenance driven, it's going to cost us down the road. That needs to be presented to us. And so, and again, ultimately, it's up to council to say yes or no. I'm not taking that away from council or anything like that, but the needs need to be presented in that way. And
well, in the instance of the fire department, Chief Taylor, I'm sure you'd agree with me. We went to having the maintenance done outside with City-Ins Martin. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We've always had contracts with City-Ins Martin. I know that when that comment was made a few years ago, most of that was in reflection to the fleet that we inherited that was designed basically for a volunteer department. So increasing the needs for how we operate now, moving towards where we're heading quickly right now, our fleet department has made great strides with what we've done in-house, as well as those repairs that we need to have made by emergency vehicle technicians that are certified for the life safety aspects of that fire equipment. So they've done an outstanding job partnering with those outside entities to move this along in a very productive way.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor. I was in 2019, that facility, a project updating, or maybe not updating, a project, updating that facility won awards. So 2019's, 5 years ago. So we've spent money on there not that long ago. Spent money on that facility. So it's, if we spend this, what is it, 3.5 million, is that it for a while, or? Councilmember Patel, no.
This will repair the three key components that are addressed in the quote. This will address the cloth disc filters, the probe controllers, and the UV system. There are other components that will require attention. That things continue to age. This will not bring the entire facility to as new condition. It will bring those three components to as new. We are definitely seeing infant mortality, and to me, with my maintenance background and the background of the individual that has taken our asset reliability manager role, it is definitely infant mortality and must be avoided. And that's why we do condition assessments and we do risk assessments. And ensure that we're providing the right maintenance on the equipment as required to prevent that, so that we do get the sustained usability and the use of that investment for at a minimum the standard, the life expectancy of the equipment.
I know Councilmember Koza was referring to some maintenance. When I first was sworn in, I went to a training and we talked about maintenance, and I thought there was some software being instituted to keep up with maintenance. Is that what we were told?
Well, we were getting new software, and good, bad, or indifferent, the old data did not migrate over.
Oh.
So we start from new, and that's why when we see vehicle purchases, when we used to get pictures of vehicles and we used to get the maintenance history and we used to get all the rest of the information, why we don't get it anymore.
But we do have the new software to keep track of maintenance, okay. But that doesn't work for this per se. Thank you.
Okay.
David?
So,
I had a couple of questions from the description in our agenda packet. So it says that this facility was originally designed to be automated and that it's had continued problems due to equipment malfunctions. Are you saying that the equipment malfunctions is due to the lack of proper and deferred maintenance? That's what's causing the malfunctions? Or did we get bad equipment?
The lack of maintenance and calibration of the probes and panels and instruments that inform the logic within the program that controls the process.
That's the malfunctions we're running into?
Yes.
Okay. So with this facility supposed to be designed for automated operation, would this be able to get it back to automated operation? Or is there still things we need to do to get it back to its original design specification?
As far as automation of the process and the sequencing of the batch reactors, that will return the batch reactors back to the designed automated process. I mean, there's still lots of manual operations that have to be done, wasting solids as an example, and maintenance and upkeep. But the process control of the biological activity will return back to automated, which has been being operated manual for some time now and proven to be very challenging.
And that was part of what I was getting at, is that will that release some of that manual need, which can free those team members up to be more intentional on other aspects of running the facility?
That is the case. This will return it to the design automation state that was intended at this facility.
Okay. And the packet also says that we've received 38 violations on this facility from the EPA so far. Have those all basically just been, hey, you need to pay attention, or are we paying fines because of those violations?
Direction from council is to defer discussions around the pending legal action to potential closed session at a later date.
I'm not referring to the impending. I understand we're under notice that we may have legal action coming if we don't do something.
Okay.
I'm referring to the 38. In our packet, it said we've already received 38 violations. I'm wondering, are those violations that we had to pay fines on because of the operation of the facility?
Those 38 violations are the sightings that are listed in the administrative order that we are now.
They're part of the notice of pending litigation. Are those?
Yes, they're yes.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I wasn't clear on. So, okay, gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm going to hold off on my question. Hold on.
we're about to wrap up. Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mayor. David, I know you got asked a lot of questions today, so if you could just indulge me for a second. I know Councilmember Koza said that this was part of the original, this equipment was part of the original build, I guess 20 years or less, or was this part of the reconstruction that we did, an expansion?
It's a bit of a mixture. The original construction were 3 sequential batch reactors. The expansion added 3 more, so there are a total of 6. So it's a mix. Now, one of the components was replacing all the blowers for all 6 basins. That's one component, and that's a big ticket item. They added a second UV channel. So one was original to the facility, and the second UV channel was new in the rehabilitation or the expansion, just like the disc filters. One was new to the facility, and the other was added at the expansion.
So it's fair to say some of the parts got their useful life out of this. If you're saying from originally 20 years ago when Shadow Creek Ranch was building homes, that's when this facility was put in there, I believe. So I would say part of this 3.5, the useful life has been recouped. Would it be fair to say?
That's a very good point, and yes, I believe that is fair to say.
Okay. And just understanding, and I don't, my expertise is not in this at all, but is there any possibility of the equipment that is newer in the expansion, would it be possible to refurbish it? Is it possible to keep that equipment, refurbish it for future use in case we have a problem like this again? Or do we dispose it completely and we lose out on it? Didn't mean to startle you, David.
Oh no! I'm trying to think of the best response. We are refurbishing a good portion. The disc filters are going to be rehabilitated, refurbished, and that's actually the biggest portion of this. What is it, like 2.8 million of it is the disc filters.
Okay, and they're taking the old ones and refurbishing and reinstalling it.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the case.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you, man.
I do have a question regarding rates. So Victor, when we passed the rate model and our rate action this last year, we took into consideration certain variables and certain things that we knew were going to be in our rates, and part of that was probably cash on hand. If we're dipping into the cash on hand, is this getting into our rate model from what we had anticipated coming up this next year, where it would change significantly, or?
Good point, Mayor. At this stage, I'm not alarmed by this expenditure in the enterprise fund. It will mean, no doubt, that David will have to nip and tuck a little bit with some other projects that he had planned, but I wouldn't be suggesting we need to amend the rate model at this stage. When it comes to budget amendment 2, if that changes, we would bring it to you then.
Sounds good. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Carbone?
Aye.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Member Chavadilla?
Aye.
Member Byram?
Aye.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Tuman?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right. Good job, good questions, good comments by all. David, it's a tough spot to answer those types of questions, so I appreciate your candor in bringing that to us. Mr. Byram, if you'll present item number 5, please.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Consideration possible action, resolution number R2025-8. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Maybe not.
We're done.
Thank you, Mayor. This relates to the widening of FM 518. It's in 2 parts. The first is to agree the funding agreement with the state to relocate the utilities that are within the TxDOT right-of-way. Therefore, it's our cost. And then the second part is the good news, is the funding of that to be reimbursed by the EDC to the city.
All right, throw it open to questions, comments from council.
Thank you, Mayor. So I understand that EDC is going to fund this project. However, will we receive any funding from TxDOT?
Mayor, specific to this, we will not. This is our cost because the current utilities are within the TxDOT right-of-way, not within our easements. So if we don't move them, basically when TxDOT widens the road, they will cover our utilities over, and we do not want that. So it's on us to move them out of their right-of-way.
We should be obviously ahead of where TxDOT will be when they get ready to go. Mr. Tooman?
Just a quick question. I mean, we're not just moving them, we're looking at any possible upgrades or oversize or things that are needed to go we're planning for the future with this, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
That's a good point. I would say, I think it's a fair statement that a lot of those utilities have been in the ground for quite a while. I know we did the western expansion of water out to Food Town and beyond, over all the way into the Sunrise Lakes. You know, that would have been in the 90s when that was done. So most of these facilities are at least 30 years old, you know, going down through there. So, right. And yeah, it'd be interesting. We can look at the GIS system, see what the sizing is, but obviously we'll hopefully opportunity to improve that. Any other questions and comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Aye.
Member Cade?
No.
Member Tuman?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Carbone?
Aye.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Member Chavia?
Aye.
The motion passes 6-1.
All right. With that, there's no other business to be taken there. Mayor, council issues for council discussion, there is none. We do have an executive session under Texas Government Code Section 551.072, deliberation regarding the sale, lease, purchase, or exchange of real property. With that, council will adjourn into exec session at 8:21. Return from executive session at 9:21, and with that, there's no action to be taken. We'll move to adjournment at 9:21. Francis.
Christina.